Good morning, Reptilians. Welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to start a series, I guess, where I just go over how much animals cost. This is a question I get a lot, and I just wanted to kind of go over it in a video. We're going to start with bearded dragons. I feel like I've been doing a lot of bearded dragon stuff lately, but we're going to start with bearded dragon, but I plan to go through all of the animals that I own at some point, not consecutively, but at some point I plan to be through all the animals that I own. So I wanted to go over how much it costs to have a bearded dragon. We're going to go over how much the initial setup and everything is first, and then we will get down to monthly cost of sustaining that bearded dragon. I often say that bearded dragons are not beginner pets just because how much it costs to get started with one, and the fact that they're prone to parasites, which means vet bills and vet visits possibly. So starting with the dragon itself, we won't factor in that price because it can range greatly. I paid $35 for Zaz, which is about how much you're going to pay for a normal bearded dragon, but that can go up to hundreds of dollars if you want some of the more fancy bearded dragons. I do want to say that all of these prices are going to be estimates for where I live because I don't know how much things cost in other places, but from where I am and how much I paid for things and all that, that's what we're going to go by with these prices. Let's start with the tank. I never buy tanks at full price because they are insanely priced. They are so much money. My biggest suggestion and the way that we're going to calculate this is by the Petco's dollar per gallon sale. They actually don't include 40-gallon breeders in this sale anymore, so the 40-gallon breeders come out to be 50% off of their normal price, and that brings us to about $45 for the tank by itself. And with that sale, you don't get a lid. You have to have some kind of lid, especially if you have small children or other animals, dogs, cats. They can get to that dragon. You have to have a lid. And just a plain lid, no hinges or anything, for that 40-gallon breeder is going to be about $23 is what I found on Amazon. So that is the lid and the tank. So that brings us to about $63 for the tank. You are going to save a lot of money if you can find this tank secondhand on places like Craigslist or Facebook. So often I see the full tank and lid and even sometimes domes or bowls and things like that for just $40 or $50 on Craigslist. Just make sure that you sanitize everything that you get off there. Otherwise, in the Petco dollar per gallon sale, you are looking at about $63 at very, very minimum for that tank and the lid. Next up, very, very important, you are going to need a heat source for your bearded dragon. Bearded dragons are diurnal creatures and they spend 90% of their day basking. So you are going to need a basking bulb to keep that dragon warm. I highly suggest getting a dimmable dome to house your heat bulb because then you are going to be able to adjust the heat, and you spend a little bit more money for the dome with the dimmer switch, but it's going to save you from having to switch out bulbs in the long run, so I highly suggest it. On Amazon, a Fluker's dome with a dimmable switch is $12, and then for the bulb you have a lot of options, especially if you get that dimmer switch. You can literally get whatever you want. So the light bulb varies in price, so we're just going to say $10 because there's a lot that's more than that and some that's less, so we're going to put that at about $10 for the heat bulb itself. Bearded dragons have to have lots of UV light. They cannot properly digest their food without it. It is highly advised that you get a linear UVB light and that it takes up at least 2/3 of your tank. If you are starting with that 40-gallon breeder, that means that you would need the 24-inch UV light hood, and you have to replace that bulb every 6 months. That bulb is $25 on Amazon, and the hood, I paid like $50 for mine, but when I was looking, I found a lot of less expensive options that aren't made by Zoomet or Exoterra. Like, they're not name brand hoods, but it seems like a lot of people on Amazon buy this hood with this light, and I'll leave everything that I'm talking about in the description below. But the cheapest hood that I was able to find for the UV light was $35. So that's $60 just in UV lighting, and like I said, you have to replace that UV bulb every 6 months. so that's another $25 every 6 months. Flooring. This one's kind of tricky. A lot of people use just paper towels for their bearded dragon, which you can go to the dollar store and get for $1. I use tile that I get cut, which you can find very cheap if you look around. I get mine from the Habitat for Humanity Restore in my area, and I use a tile cutter and cut it myself. You can also find tile at Home Depot for really cheap, especially if they have a lot that's broken and they can cut it for you. So this one varies greatly. If you're gonna do paper towels, it's gonna cost $1. If you're gonna do tiles from a Habitat for Humanity, I think mine costs like $3 or $4, but you have to have a tile cutter. So for flooring, we're gonna say anywhere from about $1 to about $25 if you need tile and a tile cutter. And obviously, if you already have a tile cutter, then you can subtract the $20 for the tile cutter, but yeah. You also are going to need some sort of vessel to put the animal's food in. This, again, you can really use anything you want. You can go to the Dollar Tree and get a bowl, or you can go to the reptile section and get a more naturalistic looking bowl. These bowls can get super expensive, so we'll just say about $1 to maybe $10 for the food bowl. You're going to need somewhere for your animal to bask. This one again is very variable. My bearded dragon's current basking spot is a giant piece of driftwood that I found at my local river, but I've also used platforms that I have purchased. So for this one, we're gonna say it can be anywhere from nothing to about $20. Speaking of basking spots, you need two things to measure temperature. You are going to need a hygrometer / thermometer to measure the humidity and the ambient temperature in your tank, because bearded dragons need the humidity to be super low in that tank, so you want to make sure that you are monitoring that. And you also just want to make sure that the ambient temperature in the tank is okay. You also are going to need a heat gun. Heat guns are super important because just a regular stick-on thermometer is not going to measure the actual temperature of the basking spot itself. Bearded dragons need a pretty high basking spot, and babies need it higher, but basking bulbs can quickly overheat those hot spots a lot. So you have to make sure that you have something to monitor that, and for that you would use a temperature gun. Temperature guns are so important. I cannot stress enough how important temperature guns are. It is going to make life so much easier, and it's going to make your habitat a lot more safe for your bearded dragon. The digital hygrometer and thermometer that I use in most of my tanks to measure just the ambient temperature and humidity is $10 on Amazon, and the temperature gun that I use is $14. So that is $24 in just measuring temperature. During the winter time, especially if you live in a colder region, you need something to heat up your enclosure at night, because you're not going to use any kind of light source during the nighttime. Bearded dragons are pretty hardy and can tolerate a temperature drop to about 70 degrees, but anything below that, you need some kind of nighttime supplemental heating. You can do this in two ways. The first way is a ceramic heat emitter. This is just a bulb that doesn't put off any light and only puts out heat. For this, you need a dome with a dimmable switch again, and you're probably going to need a separate one because when nighttime hits, you're not going to want to unscrew the hot light bulb and put in a different one. So that is another $12 for another dome and another $10 for the ceramic heat emitter. If you don't want to go that route, the more expensive route, but it works for a lot of people, is to use a heat pad with a thermostat. If you're going to go this route, I would highly suggest putting that hot spot where you know your animal is going to sleep at night, and that's going to cost about $15 for the heat pad and about $20 for the thermostat. I cannot stress enough how important it is to have a heat pad on a thermostat if you're going to use that. Heat pads get very, very, very hot, and without a thermostat to regulate that temperature, it can be very harmful for your bearded dragon, and it could cause burns and fires, and it's just not okay. So if you're going to go the heat pad route, you have to have a thermostat. To clean the tank, you can do a few different things. Most of the time recently, I just use Dawn soap in water in a cheap spray bottle from the Dollar Tree, and that cost me $2. That way I can spray everything down, wipe everything down, and put her back in there with no issue. You can also do something more commercialized like flukers, and that's more expensive at about $7 a bottle. I highly suggest that you buy both, just so that when you want to completely break down the tank and scrub it and give it a very good clean, you can use the flukers. And when you want to just quickly clean up or cleaning up waste, you can use the Dawn and water. No matter what, that's going to be about $2 for the Dawn and water mixture and about $7 for the flukers disinfectant. You're also going to have supplements. You will need a calcium with D3 supplement, a vitamin supplement, as well as ReptiSafe. The calcium with D3, you can go various different brands. The one I buy is about $5, and the vitamin supplement is a little more expensive at about $10. This is literally going to be a one-time purchase once a year because you're just using a little bit to dust insects, and that's it. So that's not something that you're going to have to worry about buying often. I also would recommend getting a bottle of ReptiSafe. If you're going to have a water bowl in your tank, which you can do, just make sure it's not huge, make sure it's a small water bowl, and make sure it's not anywhere near your heat source because then it would evaporate and spike the humidity. And most of the time bearded dragons can't see standing water anyway to drink it, so you don't have to have a water bowl. But if you're going to have a water bowl, you have to make sure to treat the water that you put in there with ReptiSafe or buy distilled water. But I also use ReptiSafe in Zaz's baths when I give her a bath, just because she usually drinks that water when she's in it, so I don't want her to drink chlorinated water. A bottle of ReptiSafe is about $6 and it's going to last a while too. And then of course you need enrichment for your bearded dragon. This can literally cost as much or as little as you want. I have said multiple times in previous videos that I am a huge advocate of going to the dollar store and getting fake plants, fake cactuses, whatever, just things for your animals to do. So this could literally cost as low as $5 or $6, or if you want to go extravagant, it could cost upwards of $50, $60. So we'll just say enrichment, we'll just put it at another 20 bucks. Another important startup cost for your bearded dragon is going to be housing for your feeders. You are going to have to gut load and house your feeders. You cannot just leave it in the bag or the container that it comes in. If you're going to do crickets, you are going to need a very large Sterilite bin or another tank or something like that. I prefer just a Sterilite bin with holes drilled in it. So for dubia roaches, you're going to need a smaller bin, about $4 or $5, and you may need an even smaller bin for any kind of worms that you get, which could cost $1 at the dollar store. You're also going to need feed for those. If you're going to feed them just what you're feeding your bearded dragon, that is going to work out nicely. And you're also going to need a lot of egg crates. You can also do toilet paper rolls if you don't want to do egg cartons. Toilet paper rolls and paper towel rolls work perfectly for roaches and crickets to hide in. And you need something like oatmeal for the worms. Luckily, hornworms and waxworms don't have to be gut loaded. They come in containers and that is all they need. So we're going to say just having to set up 2 containers for 2 different kinds of bugs. You're probably looking at another $15 total to set up those 2 feeder bins. I failed to do the math before I started this video, so the grand total of starting up a bearded dragon enclosure is going to be right here. That is definitely not cheap, and it is a lot more than you would expect from a $35 animal, and we haven't even gotten into the food yet. Let's talk about monthly cost. Monthly cost for a bearded dragon is going to be food. Bearded dragons eat a lot, especially when they are babies, and they have to have a variety of foods. Starting with babies, this is something that I, again, was not told when I got my baby bearded dragon. Baby bearded dragons eat a lot. They can eat upwards of 80 to 100 crickets a day. Now, you're obviously sometimes going to get a baby bearded dragon that's not going to eat that much, but Zaz ate that much. I did not know that going into it. I was having to order crickets so much. I cannot speak for other feeders because when I first got Zaz, I did not feed her anything else other than crickets. I would occasionally feed waxworms and small hornworms just as treats, but other than that, I just did crickets, and I was having to buy 1,000 count of crickets every other week. I just realized I forgot to put the price in here, so about 80 crickets a day for 30 days comes out to about 2,400 crickets a month. and then we have to assume that some of them are going to die because crickets die very quickly. That would put us at 3 to 4 cases of crickets a month for a baby bearded dragon, which equals about $60 to $80 in crickets every month. This is only if you get them shipped to your house. Buying crickets from like a Petco and PetSmart is going to cost a lot more than this. It could easily double this price. So if you have a baby bearded dragon, I highly suggest that you get your crickets or your feeders shipped to your house. And also, as babies, they are going to need a salad. They're probably not going to eat a lot of this, but you do need to give them a small salad every single day so that they can get used to eating it. This shouldn't be too expensive if you're going to do things like collard greens and butternut squash, which is what I usually do for Zaz. Those are her favorite two things. A bunch, I don't know. A thing of collard greens is about $2 or $3, and a frozen pack of butternut squash from Walmart, which is what I always get, and I just defrost little cubes because it lasts forever, is a little over $1. So you're only looking at about maybe $4 a month in vegetables for them as babies. As adults, they are going to eat a lot more salad and a lot less bugs. So salad, you're looking at probably that $4 every other week, so about $8 a month in vegetables. And for feeders, an adult is going to eat probably between 10 and 20 crickets a day. I don't feed crickets anymore. I only do dubia roaches because I despise crickets. I don't know how many times I've said this. I do not use crickets, and the moment that I found something other than crickets to use, I took that, and I am so happy that I did. I use dubia roaches. I feed Zaz about 5 large dubia roaches or about 8 to 10 medium dubia roaches a day. So for dubia roaches, total, I usually get about 100 for a month. I currently get most of mine from thedubiadude.com. He even has a subscription now. For 100 medium dubia roaches a month, it's $25, and I think it's free shipping too. And I also go to my locally owned reptile store and get dubia roaches that way. Usually total for dubia roaches, it's gonna be about $25 to $30 a month. And then, like I said, they need a variety, so they need lots of different bugs. I do waxworms, hornworms, and superworms for Zaz as well. Waxworms are usually just fed as a treat. They are about $5 for a container. Hornworms I also only do as a treat because Zaz goes through these phases where she only wants hornworms. I buy about 1 cup maybe every other month, so 1 cup is about $12 at my local reptile store, and we'll say every other month. So that's about $6 in hornworms a month. And then I do a thing of superworms as well, and that's about $5, but she doesn't eat all those. My leopard gecko eats the other ones, so maybe about $2.50-ish. So for an adult bearded dragon, you're looking at about... I often get questions about if this has affected my power bill. I honestly don't know. If it has, it wasn't by a lot because we haven't noticed. And on our electric bills, it always says on there what our electric bill is this time and what it was this time last year. And even with the added animals that we have, it didn't change much, and sometimes it even goes down. So I don't think that it costs too much more, but that might be dependent on the area. Personally, it hasn't affected my electric bill much at all, if any. The other huge cost of bearded dragons is vet bills. Bearded dragons are very prone to getting parasites, especially if you are feeding crickets, which are more prone to carrying parasites. When this happens, or even if your bearded dragon is acting a little off, you need to take them to the vet, and they have to do a fecal exam, and they have to administer medicine to treat parasites. This is another cost, and it's going to vary greatly. Your bearded dragon may never get sick in its entire life, and someone else's bearded dragon may get sick a lot. Zaz got sick a lot, and I spent a lot of money in vet bills for her. For us, a trip to the vet with a vet exam and fecal test and administering medicine is about $50 to $100, somewhere around in there. So that is something that you need to keep in mind. Please make sure that before you get this animal that you understand that you may have to take it to a vet and that you are going to have to pay for it to see a vet if it gets sick. That is super important and is one huge cost that is way too often overlooked, so just keep that in the back of your mind as well. But that is all I have for this week. Like I said, a lot of people were curious about how much it costs to get one and to maintain one, and so I just wanted to compile all of it in a video. As always, if you are not already, feel free to follow me on my other socials and like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications every single time I put out a new video, which is every Sunday and Wednesday. This week's Instagram shout out goes to the Mrs. Emberson for following me on Instagram and going through and liking a whole bunch of my stuff. Thank you so much. You are the bee's knees. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye.